Ah.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Mighty Blaze. I'm Julie Gerstenblatt, substituting tonight for Mary O'Malley, who's the co-host of Blaze Boudoir. And if you've joined us and you don't know who we are Blaze Boudoir. We are here the fourth Wednesday of every month at 8 p.m. Central. Tonight, we are really excited to feature author Annabel Monaghan. Not only is Annabel the author of the incredible novel Nora Goes Off Script, but she is my friend. Annabel and I met in a writing workshop at Sarah Lawrence before either one of us was published, and we've been friends now for over a decade. So this is a real treat. Welcome, Annabel.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you both.
Okay, now I'm going to just introduce myself, introduce Kate, who's going to be hosting and conversing with Annabel, and a little bit about Annabel, and then I'm going to let them talk. So a little bit about me. I'm a producer here at A Mighty Blaze and sometime host. I'm a college essay coach and author of the novel Daughters of Nantucket, which comes out next March from HarperCollins. And now I'd like to introduce host Kate LeBeau, who splits her time between reading romance, writing about romance, making memes about romance, and hanging out with her husband and infant son, which involved romance, by the way.
I'm going to have to change that too because he turned.
You gotta add that. You gotta add that. Although it's implied, but
yeah.
Anyway. He runs the blog Romantically Inclined Reviews and the Instagram at Romantically Inclined, which you should all follow if you don't already. And I will post in the chat later a link. She reads all genres and heat levels, from proper romance to erotica and everything in between. And tonight's guest, as I mentioned, is the author of the summer hit romance. I'll hold it up again. Nora Goes Off Script. A little bit about Annabel. Annabel grew up in Los Angeles, majored in English at Duke University, and has an MBA from Wharton, Miss Fancy Pants. She briefly worked in investment banking before deciding to write fiction for young adults and a humor column for adults. She taught briefly at the Writing Institute at Sarah Lawrence and lives in Westchester, New York, with her husband and 3 sons. Now, Kate and Annabel are going to spend a little time talking about Nora and all things romance, and then I will be back to open things up for your questions. So please put them in the chat. Okay, ladies, see you in a little bit.
Thank you,
Julie. Julie.
Okay, Annabel. So obviously the very first thing I'm going to have you do, and I'm sure you've done this like 15 times in the last week or so. Can you just give us your spiel about Nora Goes Off Script, and just kind of tell us the plot?
The plot?
Yes.
Okay, so the premise is Nora Hamilton is a made-for-TV romance writer. So think the Hallmark Channel. And she has spent a decade writing these novels to support her deadbeat husband and her 2 children. And I said novels. I write novels. She writes screenplays. So she's been writing these screenplays for the Romance Channel for 10 years. And her husband divorces her. And she ends up writing a more serious screenplay about her divorce. And it's the best thing she ever wrote. And it gets picked up as a feature film. And when they go to film part of it on location at her house, she ends up falling in love with the man who plays her husband in the movie.
So
and then some other stuff happens.
Yeah, there's obviously some other stuff. And okay, obviously people know, I mean, if you're following me on Instagram, you know that I also have the book right here. I have a finished copy of the book right here. I just read this book in the last 2 days because that's how I roll, and I wait until the last minute. And when I first started, it's always a jolt to read like first person present tense. I'm always like, whoa, because like romance is written on all tenses. But I was like, okay, like this is gonna take like a minute to get used to. And by page 9, I was like 100% sold on this book. I had trouble putting it down, but obviously I have to sleep sometimes. But what I absolutely loved is that you have a heroine who's writing for the Hallmark Channel. Do you call it the Romance Channel in the book?
Yes.
And I love that it's her entire career is built on writing these like cheesy romances, and her own marriage that whole time was like hot garbage, and her husband sucks so bad.
So
And
bad.
so like her way of like healing from this like shitty relationship is to write this like feature film. And in my head, I pictured it like a dark, like Gone Girl type movie. Obviously, she doesn't kill him or anything in it, but
she wanted to though, but she didn't.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I can tell, but like that's what I pictured. And I was wondering, so were you previously a like Hallmark Channel watcher? Is that like where you kind of got this idea, or are you more of like the Gone Girl type like watcher?
Okay, so I'm a Gone Girl type reader, but in the year before the quarantine, so 2019, I was laid up in bed for a couple of weeks, and I started watching the Hallmark Channel. I mean, I can admit it to the public, I did. And when I say I watched it, I watched like one and then another, and I'm like, wow, 6 hours just went by. Like, what am I doing with my life? But I was so fascinated by these like really quaint small towns, and these independently owned hardware stores and just like towns I've never even been to before. And how the towns were so similar and the stories were so similar. Like after a couple, I was like, didn't I just see this one? Like, but last time she was blonde and this time she's a brunette and we're in a different town. So I just started thinking a lot about like what it would be like to be a person who wrote those movies. And it would be so interesting if that person had never been in love. And they're writing it sort of the way we watch those movies, which is like a little bit tongue in cheek. Like, okay, I know what's going to happen next. He's going to go back to the city and he's going to come back right after the commercial break. And so I thought it would be really fun to just run her through like that, once in a lifetime toe curling, big relationship and see how she'd react. And then kind of see how like that compared to what she thought it was or what she'd been writing all that time. So yes, I watched a lot of Hallmark too. I did.
I was gonna say, during COVID, I think romance had the biggest boost of any genre. Like obviously people were doing a lot more reading during quarantines and over the last 2 years, but romance had just this absolute like boom, and it became popular with a lot of people who had never really read romance before. And I think a lot of it was because like there's all this turmoil going on. There's all this like unsureness of the world. What word am I looking for there? But there we go. Uncertainty around the world. Thank you. And well, you're the writer, not me.
Good.
And so people wanted to read and watch things that were predictable and gave them these warm, fuzzy feelings, regardless of whether they were totally eye-rollingly cliche. I actually don't watch the Hallmark Channel though. I don't have cable. I don't have TV. I watch a lot of TV. I don't have like generic TV.
Right.
But so when I was reading this, I was wondering the whole time. So the hero's name is Leo, and I was wondering, he's the sexiest man alive and all that jazz. Were you picturing Leonardo DiCaprio while you wrote this, or you just who would you cast as Nora and Leo if you had the opportunity? Because I was just picturing Leonardo DiCaprio, but I don't actually find him like romance hero worthy. So I want a different face.
Well, what's funny is if just in the description of Leo in the book, I don't describe him at all. No. He's tall and he has dark hair. Like he could literally be anybody. And it's funny to me when I talk to my friends or I talk to readers, they're like, oh, you described him to a T. That's totally Brad Pitt. And I'm like, I didn't describe him at all. It's like choose your own fantasy. Everybody who reads this book, he's like whatever it is in your mind. I can see him very specifically in my mind. Like I could pick him out of a crowd. But I wasn't thinking about anybody in particular when I wrote him. And I don't know who that would be. The one actress I was thinking that would be such a good Nora is Leslie Mann.
Okay.
She's kind of like, she's sexy and she's funny and she's like a sweet mom. I just like all of her stuff. I mean, I don't see Nora as Leslie Mann, but like, I think she could do a really good job.
That's so interesting because I was really struggling. I'm not that kind of person who reads and like there's always people who are like coming up with these beautiful like social media things that are like, oh, here's like who I would cast in my favorite books and stuff. And that's not how I function. I have a very difficult time picturing faces. So what the hero and heroine look like in my book is not important to me. But because his name was Leo, I was like, I couldn't, and Sexiest Man Alive, I like couldn't stop like picturing Leonardo DiCaprio. But I like the idea of Leslie Mann as as Nora, and I would not have thought of her at all. But I can actually really see it because Nora's just this like down to earth, like she's not really like you said, she's not really romantic. She's very funny. Even like her internal dialogue is like very subtly hilarious. Like there's my favorite part, and I tried to take a picture of it and post it, but out of context, it didn't really make any sense. The quote you have where she's like trying to kill time, and she's like, "Oh, I have to like defrost turkey, or like the ground turkey," and she like takes it out of the freezer and puts it on the counter, and she just goes, "That didn't take very long." Like she still has like all this time to fill, and I was cracking up during that part. But it's not even, but like it's not laugh out loud funny unless you are reading the book. I think that was maybe like page 9 or something. It was so early.
I love that you brought that up. I forgot about that.
I just love it because it wasn't. I wanted to tell someone about it and be like, "Oh my god, this was so funny," because that's something I would do. But it wasn't funny out of context. And my husband would be like, "What? Do we have to take the turkey out of the freezer? Like, what are you hinting at here?"
Yeah.
Anyways, enough about my favorite mundane part of the book.
Yeah.
This is your first adult romance, and previously you wrote young adult.
Yes.
But was it young adult romance or was it just young adult fiction?
No, so it was supposed to be a thriller, but I couldn't not have it be romance. So I put this young teenage math genius is fighting crime with the FBI, and the unusually young FBI agent is working with her to catch the terrorists, and of course they fall in love. And the only thing I was interested in the whole time I was writing that story was, are they going to kiss? Like that was the whole story for me. So I kind of knew by the time I was done writing that story. I mean, it's also when I'm reading. Like if I read, the British murder mystery, I'm always hoping that like the butler and the maid are going to make eye contact over the dead body and have a kiss. Like it's just where my mind goes when I'm in a story. So I kind of think I was always going to write a love story.
And so what gave you the push you needed to go from like the YA novel just to adult romance? Was there any particular like catalyst for that, or you were just like, F it, I'm going to go for it?
Yeah. So I think that a lot of that is the passage of time. On one hand, I was younger when I wrote those young adult novels, and I was just starting to write. And I think that I was just in my skin. I was comfortable telling the world a story through my 17-year-old perspective. Like that was my comfort level. And since then, I started writing a column for adults, which is a lot about being a mom and family life and, sort of humorous essays about parenting. And I think that I started to develop my voice for talking about adult things. And then COVID hit, and I was in my house with so much beautiful free time. I mean, it was really like I had more free time, and all of my children were home, but they weren't waking up until noon every day. And I had no place to be. And I just thought, like, I don't know if we're all going to live through this thing or not. I'm just going to write this book. So I just sat down and started. Like, I didn't know you were ever going to read it. I just started writing this book because it really tickled me, this idea of this romance writer falling in love.
And I love that like you talked about when you were giving us the premise that it's like pessimistic in a way. Like she's not necessarily pessimistic. Like she's kind of like, oh, my husband left me, but he never loved me, so I'm not losing anything it's not like I'm losing his love through this divorce because I never had it. And it kind of has this like melancholy feel until her she awakens to the idea that she could love somebody and somebody could love her back. And I'm reading it and I'm like, oh, this is like so like, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I'm like, oh, this is so low angst and like it's just very light. And definitely like people always talk shit about the phrase like beach read, and they're like, oh, that's just like a like rude way to refer to like women's fiction. and stuff like that. But I really I was like, oh my God, like I wish I was on vacation right now reading this book, because I can just picture myself with my feet up on the beach, just completely relaxed. But then you freaking came in and you destroyed my heart for like a portion of this book. And I was like,
Sorry,
no,
Kate.
no beach. I was like, this is not, I'm like sweating bullets on the couch like earlier today. I'm like, I have completely changed my point of view. I'm like, I'm madly in love with this book, but I would not read this on a beach because I'd probably be like swearing and freaking out. Oh, it's so fresh in my mind that I'm like actually like stressed out reading it.
I love that so much.
So good. I want to like read it again right away, because I feel like because I was reading it for tonight, I was kind of like focusing on certain aspects so I would know what to ask questions to you about, and that I just need to read it again so I can just fully immerse myself in this. And I was curious. So Nora has this this building in the back of her house that is referred to as the tea house, or back of her property, and it's where she does all of her writing.
Right.
Do you have a space like that you go to write, or are you just kind of somebody who writes wherever the mood strikes?
Okay, so there was a beautiful time pre-COVID where I was alone in my house the entire day, and I could write wherever I wanted, and I could move around to write. It's like so foreign to me now. Everybody came home, and I lost my office to my son. I lost this room, which is my living room. It's like my backup office, to my husband. And everybody, I mean, I have 2 other kids here doing school. And I started writing in this little corner in this like abandoned area of my house, like a little chair. So sad. And the whole time I was writing this book, I was dreaming of the tea house, like fantasizing, drooling of being able to have a place to go like that where I could write. And I think in reality, if I had something like that, it would probably be too much pressure and I'd never go and work there. It would be like, oh God, I spent so much money on that tea house. I'll never write again. But no, I don't really have a special place to go anymore. Now I'm like super comfortable in that little chair in the corner because like, I think it's magic because I wrote 2 books there now. So I think I'm a little bit superstitious about space.
I was as I was reading it, I was kind of like, oh, like she can only really write like in the tea house, and then this movie star moves into the tea house, and when things, as they tend to do in romance novels, turn a little bit, it kind of like ruins the space for her. And I was just like, oh, like how terrible would that be to lose the place that you felt safe to like explore your creativity and your imagination, and you're literally like telling me like I lost multiple spaces.
Yeah, but I wonder if writers are superstitious or if I'm just superstitious. But I do the whole weird, like in the book, she does this whole thing where she goes to the tea house and she lights a fire and she lights her candle and she has 3 pencils and she puts one in her hair and she starts to type. I have like a whole weird thing I do before I start writing too. And if I get like out of whack with that, I somehow get it in my head like, oh, it's not going to happen today. Like if I travel and I'm going to write, I have to bring my candles. Like I have to do the whole thing. So
I feel like I have a number of author friends, and I do think that they are a rather kind of like athletes, a rather superstitious group, especially once they've like hit success once, or like success can even just be defined as literally finishing a book for the first time. And yeah, I know my mom has like crystals she lays out that she like wants to like have in the right order to like get her creativity flowing and things like that. Yeah. So you did say that you started watching the Hallmark Channel at the beginning of COVID and stuff. But you mentioned to me that you're more of like a thriller reader. But is there any, now that you've written a romance, have you kind of like started reading more romantic fiction or anything like that? Anything that's like you've read recently that you've really enjoyed? Or
so did you read The No Show by Beth O'Leary?
Oh, it's on my TBR, so it's behind me.
It's so good.
I actually heard great things.
And it's also so different. Like it's just it's organized in a way that makes it I'm not going to say anything about it. Read it. Everybody read it. It's so good.
what people hate about me on my Instagram is that I will look up the endings to books before I read them. So I know how that book, I haven't read it yet, but I was so stressed out about the plot that I looked it up to make sure that it was going to end happy. I was afraid.
I got stressed out too.
I was afraid it was a trap. I read it like, I know. But it's gotten such praise that I know I absolutely have to bump it up on my TBR. Plus, I've loved her other books. I read like The Road Trip, and absolutely, I normally don't like second chance romances at all, but I loved The Road Trip. So good.
Yeah.
No, plus, who doesn't love like being trapped in a car with your ex for a really long time?
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. No, it would be perfect.
You did mention that you have finished 2 books. Have you already written a second? Is it also an adult romance?
It is also an adult romance. And it comes
Anything you can tell us, or is it like super secret?
No, it's not super secret.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you the title because the title just got pulled today. So I'm going to have a new title. And it's going to be such a good title. I don't know what it's going to be, but it'll be some kind of title. But it is about a woman who brings her fiance home to her parents' beach house and has to revisit what happened with her family and what happened with her old boyfriend, and that all unfolds. And it's a dual timeline thing, which is a little over my pay grade. It's a little complicated, but
complicated.
It's so complicated. Like those people are really like doing a hard thing. It was hard, but it worked. It all hangs together. So thank God.
Well, good. I'm glad that does it have so it doesn't even have a title yet, but does it have like a tentative, is it out next year? Or?
I think it's this time next year.
Okay, perfect. Well, was it harder to write Nora Goes Off Script or harder to follow a book that has gotten so much attention like Nora Goes Off Script? Like in the book, she writes this like amazing feature film, and then she tries to go back to writing Hallmark, but she has like another like feature film in her. And so, but I was thinking, I'm like, wow, how hard is it to like, you write something and it gets such attention and then you have to follow that up. So was it difficult? It's
a lot in your head. And my editor, I have this wonderful editor, and she said to me at the very beginning, she said, you're really going to get in your head about your second book. Like, just so you know, it's going to get crazy. And I was like, don't be ridiculous. I'm a grown up. I would never. But I do, like, sometimes I hear someone say, I really love this book. Nora is my favorite book I ever read. And what I hear is, your next book's not going to be good enough. Like you get in your head that way. But the beauty of this is my next book it's a different kind of book. It like has a different vibe to it. The protagonist is 30, not 39, which is like a different time of life. So she's not a mother. It's just a different book. So I'm not trying to write the same book again. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think would have made me bananas. Like, let's write the same kind of story and change it a little bit. Like that would feel very false to me. So
I feel like a lot of authors do tend to write with, especially in romance, they'll create this world and then they will like create side characters within the world that they can kind of branch off into for a second book. But so you're saying that your next book is a totally different setting, totally different characters, unrelated whatsoever to Nora Goes Off Script.
Totally unrelated.
Awesome.
Totally unrelated. Yeah, that would have been smart though to use the characters I already had. You could have told me this a year ago.
Yeah. Like, it's huge in romance to kind of, not everybody obviously, but series, you have something that works and you just kind of build off it. But a lot, so I was just wondering if we were going to get more of these characters. But I think it can be good to kind of like close the door on something like Nora Goes Off Script and open.
I think you have to be very careful with yourself. Like, ooh, people liked it. I'll write a sequel. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's the sequel? There's no sequel to this book. That doesn't make any sense. But you become tempted to because you like. I really loved being in that space with Nora and Leo. Like that was the best part of quarantine for me. Like that was so fun. And now that readers are hanging out in that space, like that's super fun for me too. But I'm not going to go back in there and write another thing. It's fun to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, it sounds like the next book is going to be also just like really unique. I mean, you have a very unique voice, as I was reading this, that's part of what like captivated me so much is that I don't know if you've ever read like The Hating Game by Sally Thorne.
No.
But I kind of saw a little bit of like the same like internal monologue thing going on with Nora, and it's a very, I think that's the issue with like first person present tense is you really get into the character's head. When it's third person, you get to kind of have the separation between the reader and the characters. But when you're reading Nora Goes Off Script, I felt like Nora for most of the book. And so I'm excited to see what else you write with like such a unique voice, because I feel like it just pulled me in like so much into who your characters are. And it is only Nora's point of view. We don't get Leo's at all, which is also, I think, kind of fun to be a little bit in the dark. And some plots, like this one, would not function if we had dual point of view.
No, would not.
I'm not spoiling it for anybody, but like you need to have some sort of, you can't always have both points of views. As much as I'm sure we would love to see Leo's point of view of like meeting this kind of very structured housewife, or not housewife, but mom is the word I was looking for. Sometimes I feel like I'm just a mom housewife all the time, and they're just like,
you know what? No matter how hard you work or what your job is, if you're married and you have a house, you're a housewife.
Yeah, my house is not. I'm not doing the housewife part of it. I'm doing the mom part mostly. My last question, though, pertaining to mom life, is I usually hate children in romance novels. Just because I feel like authors are either trying way too hard to make them quirky, unique, or they are just kind of there and like they're not, you could take the kid out and it doesn't matter. But I loved Arthur and Bernadette. I pictured them as tiny little British kids, which doesn't make any sense because this takes place in America. I think it was the names. But I was wondering, did you pull from like your own, like, are they kind of based on your kids or like their personalities? How did you kind of make them so that they're quirky, but yet like relatable kids? They're not geniuses.
They're not. I have 3 sons that are nothing like Arthur at all. Like not at all. And I think Arthur, he was 10 years old, and I don't know why, like I just started writing. I'm like, she's got a kid. He's, I don't know, 10. And I started really thinking as I was writing the book about being 10 years old. And I've seen a lot of 10-year-old boys, and it's the moment where you're going to go one way or the other. Like, are you going to be the sporty kid, or are you going to have to find something else to do? It's a very tricky time, and it's a very tricky time to have your father leave you. Mm-hmm. So I just sort of took frankly, a lot of my childhood. I was a little bit like Arthur when I was growing up, and poured all of that into him. Bernadette, I do not have a daughter. And my friend Linda read this very early draft of this book. She's like, I can tell you don't have a daughter because Bernadette is so straightforward. She's like, they're complicated. I'm like, are they? But she's just a kid. I don't know. She was just a spunky kid that I thought Nora might have a daughter like that.
Yeah, I think I love them both. They were just very unique characters, but I definitely love like the scene when Nora's trying to pick an outfit, and like Bernadette's just like, here's your sister, like, and talk to her on the phone. Like, you need help beyond what a small child can give you right now. Like, you need to pick the nice shoes, not the like crappy grandma shoes that you wear to funerals. That was my favorite thing with Bernadette. So
I thought it was really important that Nora have children that we were invested in, because otherwise this is just like, here she is, she's having a fling with this guy. We hope it works out. But once the children got involved, like, for a mother to have a relationship and bring her children into the relationship is just like super high stakes and terrifying. And it made me very nervous while I was writing it, because I was like, this could go really wrong. And that's all I'll say about that.
Well, I absolutely, like I have mentioned multiple times, love this book. But one of my favorite scenes, or I guess it's multiple scenes. One of my favorite things you did is that you have Nora and Leo like playing this game where one of them like picks a like career, like a crazy career or whatever, and they like build a Hallmark movie plot around it. And So I think they do this like 3 or 4 times in the book. They like play this game. And I was wondering, when you were like watching all these Hallmark movies during your COVID time, what like movie did you watch that had just like the most ridiculous, like?
Oh, I have an answer to this question. I was honestly like, my jaw dropped. It's the one where it's a holiday one of the Christmas, they show them in July. She is a custom wreath designer.
Whoa.
Yeah. So she only works 1 month a year. And she lives in this small town. There are probably only 20 doors in the whole town for a wreath. And she's a custom wreath designer. She lives in this beautiful house. She has marble countertops. She has a different coat for every day of the Advent season, like different shades of red and green. And I'm like, what are the economics of this woman's life? Like that. And I think that's why I got so heavy into the economics of Nora's life in her book, because like, I think it was really just subconscious on my part, but like, if you're gonna be, supporting yourself, you've got to know like all the ins and the outs of the cash flows. And the Hallmark movies, it's just hilarious. I mean, this woman couldn't make more than $200 a year. Just don't understand.
That reminds me of I don't know if you watch House Hunters ever, but it's like on House Hunters, they're always like,
I love it.
He trains gerbils. He like is an aspiring writer, and together they have a budget of $1.5 million to buy a house. And so that cracks me up. And I guess I didn't really realize that in the book that you don't really like, financial insecurity is a big concern of hers, because she is the sole breadwinner for her family now, and she was before, because like we talked about, her husband's a deadbeat. And so you did kind of like, you really did address the like, she budgets, and this is how much she makes when she sells a script to the romance channel, and this is how much she gets from her feature film. Were those actual numbers that you found throughout? So you did like your actual research. You were like, how much would a screenwriter get for the Hallmark Channel?
That's probably the only research I've done in like a decade of writing. I do not ever do research. So lazy about it. But yes, that was really important to me. And I also ran her life through TurboTax because I just wanted to make sure that I had it right. Like she's self-employed, she'd pay like a 3% self-employment tax. Like I really wanted to make sure that the net numbers were real the way they worked out.
Wow, I always think about research in romance novels, but people normally skate over the like money component of it.
I like money. I like talking about money. I like writing about money. I think it's like a really interesting, people have an interesting emotional attachment to it. So that was kind of fun for me. Hi, Julie.
I liked it.
Hi, I'm back. I heard you talking about money and research, and I thought, wow, I do a lot of research, but so far I haven't made a lot of money doing that. But we're getting there. So yes. I'm here with some questions from the audience. Are you guys ready for them?
Yes.
All right, let's pop one up. How did you go from writing this for yourself to getting it published?
That is a great question. So I thought we were all dying. So I was writing this book just because, last chance. And then when I finished it, I had a feeling that it was a thing. I really had a feeling like, this book has a heartbeat. So I gave it to a couple of friends to read. I made my children read it. They were not pleased about it. And then I had to pay them money to read it. It's a whole other thing. They read it and they were like, this is actually a thing. So I sent it to my agent, who went missing during COVID and did not read it. And after like 8 months, I emailed her and I said, I got to get a new agent. And so I got a new agent, and she sent it out. And by like some miracle of post-COVID life, it sold in like 2 days. Like it was just a really, I just got it to it was the right agent, and she got it out to the right people. And that's how that beautiful thing happened.
That's awesome. Can I just ask if that other agent is somebody I might have also had as an agent at one time?
Yes. She's a lovely person. No. And she responded to me like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I never had a chance to read it. but yeah, it was like it was a really crazy thing because I was so, when you make something and you're like, I swear I think this is good. Like
Yeah.
I really know.
Yeah.
But then you wonder, like, everybody thinks their kids are cute. Sometimes our kids aren't cute. So
Yeah, I got that. But I do feel like you've been writing long enough and writing like the column, you know when it's good and you can tell, like.
yeah, I had a feeling about this. Like I really was like, this thing has a pulse. So luckily I wasn't like, oh well, I guess it's no, so
Right. So some of it is trusting that gut and that voice and knowing when to push on it and get some, and I think it probably also helps to have reader friends.
Yeah.
To get it to that next level. Okay, I got another question for you. Would you consider writing a book in the future about characters you've created, or are you completely about creating new characters? Now, I feel like this is a romance question because there's series and people get so, they fall in love with this character and know that they can follow them and be with them. I'm thinking of Virgin River even, and just know that you're going to be with those people for a long time. So I think that's why this question came.
Or like a bonus epilogue you put in your newsletter.
That's fun.
Or like a mini, a Kindle mini.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh no, everything you just said, I love. The idea of a sequel with these characters like living out their life and having tiffs and making meatloaf, I kind of like falling in love for the first time. So like I think I'd like to have new characters falling in love and like explore different things. But I do love that mini idea. That's
a mini. Yeah, I've seen, like Ellen Hildebrand does like some little ones, or you take another character, like maybe one of the other, like an, agent, editor person from the story.
Yeah.
And we follow them for a little bit.
Yeah. It's super big, especially with like Patreons now and like, getting people signed up for your newsletter to create these bonus stories of characters they already love. It's incredibly popular in romance right now.
Wow.
So,
okay. Yeah. What else you guys got for me? I like this. Is great.
That's good. And I will tell you that I have a minor character from my first book who's going to be all grown up and a major character in my second book. So even though it's like a jumping off point, and it's somebody that I loved. He was like the little boy running around during the fire in, the Great Fire of 1846 that I'm writing about. And I just didn't want to leave him. And I wanted to know if he did go out to sea and if he did become this explorer. So.
I love that.
I see Arthur having his own book 10 years from now.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And he's a budding actor.
Yeah.
Right.
He's spending some time on the couch with his therapist too.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll have the acting and the therapy together.
Okay. This I think is our last question, but I'm, unless Kate has some others she wants to.
No, I want to know this because I had more questions about book tours. So I wrote book tours really, really big.
Okay. So what's been the best and worst thing about being on a book tour?
Well, I was saying to these guys before we started that complaining about your book tour is like when you get your Oscar and you're like, oh, this is so heavy. Like you should shut up about it because you're so lucky to have an Oscar. I feel so lucky to be going on a book tour. And if I wrote this book a year earlier, I wouldn't have done this last summer. So this is like, it has been so exciting to be, first of all, out in the world, which I have not been for a long time. And to have this experience of like being in a room with people who have inhabited the experience that I had in my head. I mean, I know this is what writers do, but it's like I created a world in my head and then other people read the book and then now it's in their head and now we're talking about it. Mm-hmm. That has been just absolute magic. I mean, it has been so much fun and every single event has been really fun. So that's been great. The worst thing I will say is just being away. And specifically, I have a child home from college. And I haven't seen as much of him as I would like to this summer.
Yeah.
But I don't think it bothers him that much, but and my husband has stepped up in a major way to be doing all the things that need to happen.
Right. Well, that's great. Okay. I feel like I'm going to have to bring a pillow I cannot sleep in a hotel without, I'm going to be like the weirdo carrying a pillow with me if I stay even one night, because I don't expect this world tour, but like I might go to Connecticut and need to stay at a, Days Inn, and I'm going to have to like literally schlep my own pillow into a hotel.
So you need special things.
Pillows everywhere he goes.
I mean, yeah, like special things. Like I don't have the ritual so much about writing, but I do have a ritual about sleeping.
Okay. Yeah. No, you got to plan for that.
Yeah.
No, sleeping in a hotel by myself is the most glorious.
Yes. Amazing. But I can't sleep. I love being in the hotel room, but then I can't fall asleep.
I spread out like a starfish, man. I'm like, look at me. Oh, I love it. It's great.
I got one more. Do you listen to the podcast Script Notes? They talk about screenwriting and sometimes talk about money and economics in their profession.
No, I've never listened to that. I would love to listen to that.
There we go. Now wait, so it was a question, but it was also an answer. It was like kind of like giving you some thing to do.
I feel like I'm taking away a lot.
Are you taking notes over there?
Yeah, no, I like give me some advice. This is great.
I think that's it. We have a comment from Rachel. Reach just realizing the Virgin River is Netflix version of a Hallmark movie series. Have you seen it?
I feel like Netflix they saw what Hallmark Channel was doing, and they are capitalizing on that. They have quite a few like Netflix original movies that are very Hallmark vibe, but they're geared towards like, I feel like Hallmark is more geared towards like 30, 40-year-olds, and then now they have like these movies that are clearly geared towards like teens, early 20s that are very much the young adult-ish version of a Hallmark movie though.
Right. I think it's an interesting kind of mystery that's happening in entertainment is that anybody you talk to in Hollywood will tell you we're not making rom-coms anymore. Like there is no more When Harry Met Sally. We're not doing it. It's over. Marvel movies, whatever. That's what we're doing. We're not doing rom-coms anymore. But when I talk to readers say to me, oh God, I would love to sit in a theater and eat popcorn and watch this movie. And there's some kind of disconnect because the Hallmark Channel has 24 million viewers. Mm-hmm. Like people are like dying to watch these, manufactured in a factory kind of romance things. Yeah. But for some reason, they're not being made for the big screen. I don't know what it is. It's targeting the male audience, not the female audience. Yes. Is that what it is?
I was just going to say, I think it's because men are still largely running the studios and the decisions about what's a big film. And they like to have, superheroes and things blow up. Yes. And that's big budget, stuff. And
but do you know how cheap it is to make a romance that takes place in a house?
Yeah.
Like, I would think you would be like, let's make more of those.
Yes.
Like, it was cheap to make the Notebook.
I do know that 2 romance authors recently are so Tessa Bailey just had her novel picked up to be produced on the big screen, I believe. And then Alexis Hall, who writes queer romance, it's tentative, but one of his novels is being looked at for the big screen as well, which is really fun. And I feel like that's where like streaming services like Netflix have kind of like filled in the gaps a little bit. Like they see that like the female viewership, or not even necessarily female, but like the people who read romance want to intake that content on a screen. They want their books made into big productions. Like Bridgerton blew up, #1 show on Netflix ever.
Yeah.
And it's just like so I don't know why more people aren't seeing the popularity of things like that, but
why is everybody just trying to redo Bridgerton? I mean, that was a home run.
Yeah. They just got to do it more. But I think Netflix picked up, they're doing, they have like, 6 to 8 seasons of Bridgerton. I'm not even sure how many books there are, but I know that at least the streaming services are seeing the popularity and doing something about it. Even if the big television or movie people
that's
sleeping on it.
That's an interesting format too, because you're writing a different, even if it is sort of formulaic and the same story each time, you're writing about You just need a big family, Annabelle, and then you just write about a different sibling in each book. That's what you do.
And then you do their kids, and then you do prequel, and you go back in time and do their parents.
Yeah.
And their grandparents.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
We got it all figured out for you.
Okay. God, I'm so glad I came here tonight.
So we are so glad you came here tonight. And I feel like that's a good segue into saying goodbye and sending both me and Annabelle on the East Coast to bed because it's late here. Central Time, you guys still have some time. So I'm going to tell you that our guest next month is Priscilla Oliveras, author of contemporary romance with a Latinx flavor. And thanks so much for joining. If you like what you see here, please feel free to share it. It will live forever on YouTube, forever and ever. And I know we'll be young forever, Annabelle. You
Too late
on this show.
Thank you guys so much for having me. This was
thank you for being here.
Enthusiastic about the book, and this was so much fun.
We're so happy to hear that, and we're so glad that we got to do this. So everybody, give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, sign up for our newsletter at Mighty Blaze so you will never miss an event like next month's interview with Priscilla, and then go and buy Nora Goes Off Script.
Yes.
Yay.
Buy it from your local library, support your local bookstores.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to say goodbye and good night, and we'll see you next month.
Good night.
Bye.